Hello, Mastertron Tamer here. For our next video in the Snapmaker series, I thought that we would try and tackle two filament printing together. So this is another subject that's brand new to me. I've never had that luxury before. But I thought this would be a good thing that we could learn together. So for the first project, I want to do an improved version of a project I've done before. And if you want to see that video, you can click into that and learn more about that project. But I'll just kind of quickly go over it with you. Basically, it's a way to make supersized blocks that you can then customize with whatever text that you like. And in that video, I would print the blocks in one color and then actually paint in the lettering, which is fine, that works. But I thought, well, maybe we could do this with two colors and make that all work better. So as you can imagine, these take a while to print. They're fairly big. So typically on the scale of a day or more to print. So I didn't want to experiment with learning how to do this with printing these blocks. That would take too long. And what I'm going to do is adapt a strategy that I've used before. This is a base that I created for my pan of ice. And as part of that base, I wanted little voids that blind nuts could go into. Obviously, that little void that the blind nut fits into is a pretty complex shape. So I didn't want to keep printing these every time. So I just made a little square with one of these in it and fine-tuned it and got it to work. And then I went ahead and then put them into the whole design. And that's basically the best strategy when you're trying to figure out something new with 3D design. So what I'm going to do, I think, is we'll make a small section of one of these blocks. And we'll try that as our test subject. If we get results that we like, we'll go ahead then and expand it and do it a full-size block. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and jump into some software and get going on that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our design. So I need to simulate the wall of one of those blocks. So I'm going to make this 40 here, and on them this is about 9, and then the height should be 48. Oops, there we go, come on, 48. So this will be our piece of the wall of the block that we're going to put our letter on. Now I want to make sure it doesn't topple over on the build plate, and because if it were the block it would have a lot more support. So we're going to give it a little extra support just for our test. And we'll make this 30, I think. And height 2 should be plenty. All right. And now we'll just put them on top of each other with a line. Let's align to the bottom one. Doesn't really make any difference. Whoops. And click something. Bottom one. Here, maybe if I just move this over a little, it'll click it better. There we go. Okay, so that's all we really need for our test. Now what we want to do is put a character on there. So I'm going to import one. ampersand character, because that's a pretty complicated one to print. Now you'll notice it's come in super big. That's not going to work for us. So what we need to do is change the size. We can play around this if we want. I think 5% will get us about the size yeah, that'll fit on our block really well. And go ahead and say import. Now it will go ahead and make it, give it a lot more depth than we need, but we can fix that easily. Before we do that though, let's get it oriented correctly. First off, let's flip it up. Okay. And then we'll rotate it the other way. And that gets us basically what we need. Let me lift it up so it's at least up on the build plane. There. And the thickness does not need to be very thick. So I'm going to set this to 0.4 for what we're doing. I just want a little indentation to kind of highlight the character, and this is actually going to help us when we get this ready to print too. All right, so now I'll click over here because I want to align it to the bigger block. Oops. One more time. Oh, you know, actually, I want to change that to negative first. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish my aligning. So I want to align it to that. Yeah, I've got it. To the front. And then put it right in the center. And that should be good for our test. At this point, I'm just going to do a select all, and then I'm going to export it. So let's export it. It'll keep the same name when it exports. It'll call it block test. Yep. Okay, so let's move on. Now that we've got it, we want to bring it in and work with it. So let me do that. All right. There it is. And we'll bring it in and take a look at it. Let's, so we're seeing it at its best side here. Yeah, let's move that around. What it calls the front. And that's left. All right. Oh, it's there. We can just barely see it. But our ampersand indentation is there. So right now, it's going to print this all in blue because I haven't told it to do otherwise. And this is where we're going to use this indentation to our benefit. Here, let me move this over there. so we can see that a little better. All right. So how are we going to tell it that we want another color? Well, we're going to grab this little paintbrush over here, and we're going to tell it we want to work with the right extruder, and that looks like that's already selected. And we're just going to click. I actually experimented with a couple of other ways of doing this before I knew how to do it right. That's it. We can say done at this point. And we've got what we want. So it's going to make the ampersand in red, and the rest is going to be in blue. And if we want to actually see how this is going to do it, then what we want to do is go ahead and generate the G code. There it goes. And now we can actually go down through the layers and see how it's going to make this letter for us, and just kind of verify it that it's going to be what we want. So let's do the top view. There we go. And zoom in, maybe even a little bit more. There we go. And as you can see, as it goes through, it's actually going to be making red pieces inside, which is fine. We just care what it's going to look like on the outside. I assume it's doing this because it's going to be more stable with the flow and things like that. But it's pretty cool that that's going to do that for us. So this is made. The only thing we have left to do is to go ahead and print it. So for that, we need to export it to the machine, and I actually don't have it on because I wanted to make sure you could hear me. So let me go flip it on, and then we can do the next step and export it and do our test print and see how this turns out. I'm very curious what we're going to get here. Okay, so the next step is we want to export it. So I'm going to go ahead, hit export, load to workspace. Don't really need this preview, and let's connect. Okay, got the little beep over on the machine. We're connected. Says it needs to return the tool head. Okay. All right. I think we've successfully sent the file over there. Now we have successfully sent the file over there. Okay. So now we just need to print it. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up. Well, I've completed our test prints and we've got some good results here, and I want to go ahead and go over those with you. The first thing I wanted to show you is this is exactly how it came out of the printer. It's actually not bad at all for a vertically printed two-color piece. It looks great to me. There is just a small amount of excess filament from where it was changing colors and such. It's not bad. I think for a lot of things you could just leave it at this point. But I'm going to show you how we could improve that look even a little bit more if we wanted to. Before we get to that, I kind of wanted to show you this piece here. So this one is partially printed, so you can see right inside of it as to how it was doing the different colors. You'll probably recall that earlier in the video, when I took it into the software, I had deliberately put a small indentation in it where I wanted the ampersand. I used 0.5 millimeters, as I recall. I have since played with that. You can actually reduce that value if you want, and that might get you a little better results than we got with this first one by reducing it just a little bit, maybe a 0.4 or 0.3. All the software apparently needed was some form of indentation, and it could then interpret where we wanted the other color. So that was great. But if it was just putting that color on the surface of this vertical piece, that might not be great, because it might not have laid right and might have had other various problems. Well, the slicer's taken care of that for us. As you can see here, it's actually continued that second color further into the piece. And this is going to give it a lot more stability and print a lot cleaner that it did that. And again, this was not in anything I drew. This was the slicer that decided to do that. And I'm impressed with that because I think the results kind of show how good that turned out. All right. So let's talk about how we could improve this yet a little bit more. So in these examples that I have here, and this one over here as well, they were printed on a single extruder machine. Like, I think a lot of people, that's what you have. You have a single extruder machine. So how are they two colors? Well, similar to what I did, I went ahead and did an indentation. And then I hand painted them. Now, if you're curious about the whole process of how I did that, you can go ahead and view that video. It goes through it step by step, and you might find that useful. Again, if you have a single extruder machine, you can do nice lettering like this. So how do I do that? Well, quickly, I put a clear coat over it, a matte finish clear coat. After that has dried up really good, and I typically put 2 coats on it, then I paint in the characters. My favorite paint for durability is nail polish, to our UK friends, nail varnish. It works great. It's my favorite thing to work with on something like this. Once that's completely dry, then I put a clear coat over it again. And that's basically the process. So what I thought was maybe I could adapt that and come up with a simpler way to make this one turn out even better. And that's what we have over here with this example. With this example printed, it came out exactly like this one over here out of the printer. But what I did differently is I just lightly sanded it with a 220 grit sandpaper. Did not require much sanding. Of course, you have to be careful. If you do it too much sanding, you can actually melt the filament, and you can go through the thin wall of the outside. So just a light sanding took off these little extra nudgy pieces that were protruding, and then I went ahead and used the same clear coat method. I put a clear coat of a flat clear coat over it. I then let it dry completely, gave it a very light sanding, and then I put another coat over it. This you can continue if you want, and you'll eventually end up with a mirror-like finish if you do that 2 or 3 times more, but the 2 seem to work just fine. And now I've got, well, I would call that a perfect result. I did also need to go in and kind of touch up a couple of little areas with a hobby knife and just kind of pick out a few little things that were hanging around that didn't belong. But all in all, it came out beautiful in my opinion for such a complicated character as an ampersand, and printing it vertically. So I think that turned out great, and this is completely practical should you want to do a project like this, or maybe you want to make like a sign or something where it's 2 colors. That same procedure should work just as well for you as it did for me. All right, well, I think at this point what we would do normally is we're almost ready to go to full scale. Not quite. These single characters are, you could call them full scale, I mean as far as the characters are considered. But these take a while to print, as you might imagine. We probably want to dial in the settings of the filament a little bit better before we go to such a big print. And typically you do that by printing out tests, and then you can determine exactly what temperature. My instinct on this one is maybe it needs to be turned down just a little bit, and maybe even have the retraction increased. But again, there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube about printing out test pieces so that you can dial in those settings perfectly. And that would probably be the next step before you went to a big project like this block. I know the settings for these by heart because I've made several of them with the same type of filament, so I can get away with it. But that would be the next step. Okay, well, I think that takes care of it for this project. I think we've demonstrated how we could do that. If you have any questions about any of it, please leave me a comment. I love comments and I love answering them. So if you've got any questions about how I did any of this, just leave me a comment. Or if you appreciate the video, I like those comments too, just as much or more. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like. And I'll see you in our next video.